In lesson 2.4, we're going to learn about vertical angles. We're going to find the measures of angles formed by intersecting lines. So two angles are vertical angles if they are not adjacent and their sides are formed from two intersecting lines. So think about this pair of scissors. I have two intersecting lines. The angles that I like to say they are across the street from each other would be angle 2 and angle 4 are across the street from each other. And then angles 3 and 1 are across the street from each other. Okay? Two adjacent angles that are a linear pair if their non-common sides are on the same line. So, looking at this example, the pair of scissors, I'm going to try to change the colors here. Purple. And because red and blue make purple, right? 1 and 2 would be a linear pair because as you can see it's two angles and they form a straight line. Let's try changing the color again. Don't know how well this is going to work, but let's do orange, and 3 and 4 would be a linear pair. Changing the color again to brown, 1 and 4 would be a linear pair. And we're going to change the color one more time, 2 and 3. So intersecting lines form 4 pairs of linear pairs and 2 pairs of vertical angles. Okay, so let's look at our examples here. Determine whether the label angles are vertical angles, a linear pair, or neither. Okay, so let's look at the first two, this first example. I see they form a straight line and they're side by side, so this would be a linear pair. In the next example, I have this crooked line here, so this is going to be neither. It doesn't form a straight line, and they're not really two intersecting lines to have vertical angles. And in the next example, you see that these two are across the street from each other. So these would be vertical angles. The linear pair postulate states that if I form a linear pair, they create a straight line. We know the measure of a straight line is, or a straight angle, is 180 degrees. So a linear pair is supplementary. So let's find the measure of angle RSU. I see, again, a straight line, linear pair. Linear pairs are supplementary. So the measure of RSU plus 62 must equal 180. Subtract 62 from both sides. I'll try to write it small here. And the measure of RSU then equals 118. Linear pairs, supplementary. Okay, so now we're going to look at vertical angles. Well, vertical angles are congruent. Okay, we're going to do a little proof here. I don't expect you to be able to write this out, but just to show you why it's true. Okay, this is just to show you why it's true. I'm going to start out with angles 1 and 2 are a linear pair, right? They're side by side, they form a straight line. Okay, so angles 1 and 2 are supplementary. Okay, then we're going to say the same thing about angles 2 and 3. Right? They form a straight line side by side. They're also a linear pair. So we know that they are also supplementary. Now, I don't know if you recall from one of your prior lessons, but we had the congruent supplements theorem, where we said if two angles are supplementary to the same angle, then they are also congruent. So I have 2 that's common to both of them, so 1 and 3 are supplementary to the same angle. Specifically angle 2. So angle 1 is congruent to angle 3. And they're vertical angles. Okay, so in this one, and there is a typo. This should be not RSU, but CED. Okay, so I'm trying to find CED right here. Well, I'm going to go through the reasoning here, but I don't expect you to have to write this down every time you solve a problem. I know AD and CED are vertical angles. Oh, sorry, not AD, AE. My apologies, AEB. I hope that didn't confuse you. AEB and CED are vertical angles. So that makes those two congruent, which means then their measures are equal. So CED must equal 50. Okay, so when you have intersecting lines and you're given one angle measure, you can find all the rest. So the first thing I know is vertical angles. I'm going to solve that one first. Vertical angles, measure of angle. So the measure of angle 2 must equal 35. I know that 1 equals 3 because they are also vertical angles, but they're a linear pair with the 35. So that means you take 180 minus 35 is 145. So you pause the video and try to find the other 3 angle measures when you're given one. Check your answers. The first one should be easiest to find the vertical angle, so whatever angles across from the given is the same. And then the other two are the same, and they are supplementary to the given. So you should just be able to take 180 minus the given angle. So make sure you ask in class if you have any questions about that. We can use algebra, do the same thing, solve for a variable. These two angles are vertical angles. Okay, so vertical angles I know are, hopefully you said congruent or equal. Okay, I'm going to move the 42 over. And then the 2y over. Divide by 2. And once again, pause the video and try these three. It would be best to identify what kind of angles they are and then decide if they're congruent or supplementary. You should check your answers with what I have written down. The first two are both vertical angles. Vertical angles are congruent, so you set them equal to each other. And the last one, as you can see, they are side by side. So when they're side by side like that, then they are a linear pair, so that means they're supplementary. They add up to 180. Again, any questions? You want to make sure that you ask me about it in class. So doing our concept check, what are some of the differences between vertical angles and linear pairs? So I'm going to be a little more technical here. Vertical angles, and I'm going to abbreviate, have no common side. Linear pairs do. Okay, so what else do we know? Well, vertical angles are always congruent. And if we think about it, a linear pair could be congruent if they're both 90 degrees. So this would just be may or may not be congruent. And then our last thing would be that linear pairs are always what? They're always supplementary. Vertical angles are sometimes. Thinking if we had two intersecting lines that were perpendicular or that met at 90-degree angles, then they would be supplementary. And that's the end of lesson 2-4.